You want speed off the edge? I got a name for you.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Oh, hey-oh, it's a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions. Everybody on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Matt Derry with you. Today is Tuesday, March 25th, and a Wednesday, is it March? Yeah, it is. March 26th. Wait, tomorrow's March 26th? Happy March 26th day, everybody. Hit the old bit siren somewhere if you can. But thanks for checking us out wherever you get your podcast. Talking Detroit Lions football with you. Thank you to our everydayers that are out there that watch on YouTube or listen wherever you get your podcasts daily to this very program. If you want to be our call of the day tomorrow, please go to speakpipe.com/Derry podcast page. That's speakpipe.com/Derry podcast page. Leave a voicemail. Keep it under a minute. And you too can be our call of the day. We'll do one of those tomorrow. Special guest today from theathletic.com, known best for his quarterback tiers. The great Mike Sando, longtime NFL writer from The Athletic, will join us momentarily on the show. We'll talk Lions offseason, talk a little free agency, the draft, Jared Goff, and more with Mr. Sando coming up momentarily. Draft is less than a month away. And today I saw something that I had to bring up. If the Lions don't take an edge rusher at 28, there could be a guy, second round, maybe even third round, that the Lions could look at that not many people have heard of. And some have him ranked like the 10th best edge rusher in the draft. But I looked this up today. I saw something today. I couldn't believe it. Louisville edge rusher Ashton Gillotte. Yes, that's his name. Ashton Gillotte, who is 6'3", 264, didn't run the 40-yard dash at the combine. He wanted to save it for his pro day, which was today in beautiful Louisville, Kentucky. From Ian Rappaport today from the NFL Network, Louisville edge Ashton Gillotte, a name that is already generating buzz as we get closer to the NFL draft, ran a blazing 4.63 40 at his pro day in front of representatives from all 32 clubs. So, hey, the Lions were at Louisville Pro Day today. Of course, Louisville quarterback, Tyler Show or whatever his name is, he was there. Or Shuck, Tyler Shuck is his name. But Ashton Gillotte, hold on a second. 6'3", 264, ran a 4.63 40. That's like wide receiver, running back, and cornerback numbers. A 4.63 for this dude, and he's an edge rusher. So I decided to do a little research, thank goodness for the internet, and watch some tape. And I saw that this kid's pretty good. Not considered a first-round pick. Struggles against the run. Probably just more of a 4-3 edge rusher. Not a guy that could be in a 3-4 system. Played in all 12 games this past year for Louisville. He had 23 solo tackles, 43 total tackles, and 4.5 sacks. 2 years, so he didn't have a great year this year. 2 years ago, he was first team All-ACC, second team All-American, with 45 tackles, 14.5 tackles for loss, and 11 sacks. So a down year this past year for Gillotte. But I'm sorry. Anytime I see that a guy that size ran a 4.63 40, I mean, that just kind of blows me away. Now, I am well aware that Brad Holmes doesn't just look at 40 times. He wants to look at RAS scores. He looks at everything that goes into it. All right. But for a guy like this, Ashton Gillotte, pretty impressive to run a 4.63 40. I looked at the NFL mock draft database, and most people have him between a third and a fourth round pick. Then I watched the tape. All right. And I looked at highlights. He doesn't shy away from contact. He's just not that strong against the run. He is your basic pass rush type guy, off the edge, played on the inside at times in the 4-3. But I can't get past the 40 time. I mean, 4.63 is pretty darn impressive for a guy that size. But I think the bigger question is going to be, where he could end up, how far he falls in the draft. Could he be a second round pick? And there's already teams that, are looking at him. The 49ers, for example, at NinerNoise.com, they're talking about Ashton Gillotte and saying that, look, if he would have come out of college after his junior year, he would have been drafted a lot higher than what he is projected this year. And again, 4.5 sacks compared to the 11 sacks he had 2 years ago. I understand that. But a lot of people look at him as maybe a second or third round pick. Some, like I said, have him in the fourth round. But we've been trying to find the bookend for Aidan Hutchinson and the discussion about where to put, who to take. The Lions have a lot of options at 28. We know this. We know Brad Holmes is not going to take Ashton Gillotte at 28. He's not a first round guy. He's just not. But good motor. Was at the combine and 4.63. Wonder why he had a down year this past year. The numbers were down. That probably blew him back a little bit and brushed him back a little bit into that third or fourth round. But the Lions do not draft an edge at 28 or even an edge at 60. They have the third round compensatory pick. Do they move up to get a guy like this? 4.63 for a guy that size is crazy good. And the Lions need somebody coming off the edge that can have that kind of speed that can get to the quarterback opposite of Aidan Hutchinson. Pretty impressive numbers there for Ashton Gillotte. Just keep a name. That's just a name to keep an eye on. He wowed people today at his pro day with the 40-yard dash time. Probably helps him move up, but still doesn't put him in the first round. Probably not even the second round either. All right, our guy Sando, Mike Sando from theathletic.com. Coming up next, we'll talk quarterback tiers. He's not going to give away what the tiers look like before the season, but I want to get his thoughts on what he thought of Jared Goff this past year. We'll do all of that right here on a Tuesday, Locked On Lions. Folks, Locked On Lions brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. We know this. March Madness is here. Sweet 16 coming up Thursday, Friday, then the Elite Eight Saturday and Sunday. FanDuel giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who is cutting down the nets. If you've been on the FanDuel app, so easy and simple to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around. Go on FanDuel now. You want to take Michigan plus like 9? They're getting 9 points from Auburn late night Friday night in the Sweet 16. Nobody thinks that Danny Wolf, Big Vlad, Trey Donaldson and company can hang with the Bruce Pearl-led Tigers. Well, you want to put some money down on it? You could take Michigan to the points at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com. Get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. It is FanDuel.com. All right, as promised, here on a Tuesday, Locked On Lions, our buddy Mike Sando joins us from theathletic.com. It's very early to talk quarterback tiers. We're not going there yet with Mr. Sando. That's what he's best known for, and we love him. But we'll get into some Jared Goff with Mike, and he joins us today on the show. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Good. Good to see you, my friend. How's the offseason so far?
Pretty good. Be heading to the league meetings here. Looking forward to that in Florida, where it's warmer than it is here in the Pacific Northwest. So that's what's next for me.
Tell me your thoughts so far on the Lions offseason. Obviously, we got the draft in about a month, but what do you think of the free agency haul, which, as you know, Brad Holmes is not one that's going to dip into that pool and jump right into all the free agents. Yeah. He likes to be calculated, but how do you view his class so far?
Yeah, I think it was fine. They needed to replace Carlton Davis, and they probably upgraded with DJ Reed. You could make a good case, that's a little bit of an upgrade. So that made sense. But I don't think anything, changed the dynamic of the team, nor would you expect it to. They're a good team. And frankly, everyone's going to be talking about the coaches this year, the coordinators, I think more than any moves that were expected in free agency or that sort of a thing. Wouldn't you say? I mean, they made some moves, but it's not like those moves are, they typically aren't in free agency. Free agency comes and goes. The odds to win the Super Bowl don't change, right? I mean, it's not like they're adding a quarterback or something that really moves the needle. They made a move in their secondary. They probably still need to make a move to get some pass rush help. Maybe they could add another offensive lineman, but it's a pretty good team.
I want to ask you about the assistant coaches in a second. Obviously, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, but you mentioned DJ Reed. Look, not a lot of us watched a lot of Jets football this past season, and kind of playing in the shadows of the Detroit native Sauce Gardner. But is that an upgrade in your mind going from Carlton Davis to DJ Reed?
I mean, I think it probably is. I've always liked DJ Reed's kind of playing temperament. I did see him when he was here in the area I live in, Seattle, and I think I think he's always been kind of a scrappy guy. He's moved around a little bit, but has usually stuck for a couple of years most places, and I think he's a competitor. He's not a measurables guy or going to lock down half the field, but I think he's going to battle and fit in the competitive nature that the Lions want to have, and so should be a good fit on the team.
You surprised with the Levi Onwuzurike situation, only getting a 1-year deal, taking a lot less money than I think people thought he'd get after the year he had. PFF loved him. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was one of my notes on here. I think, what did he get, $4 million a year, something like that? So it was. Now, usually when that happens, there's more information to the story in terms of medical or durability or something there that affects a guy's market. Sometimes though unexpectedly, because those of us who aren't privy to all of that or the full details, don't know. I wouldn't say he's a complete player that was going to be hugely coveted, but I think he could have been somebody that you might have thought would draw a little more interest in that. So good for the Lions because they know him.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. And again, a 1-year deal. And that's kind of what Brad Holmes does. I mean, Mike, the amount of 1-year contracts going back the last few years and how they've worked out. You look at a guy like Kevin Zeitler, who was fantastic this past year, unfortunately left, but another 1-year deal. What's the mindset? I think of some of these guys when they're only signing for 1 year, are they thinking, all right, I'll get the big bag next year? Or is it like, hey, I'll sign a 1 year with Detroit because I want to be on that team?
It could be that one. And then some of these guys maybe need a year. You get a guy who needs a year for the launching pad. He may not be hitting the market as absolute high, or you have a disciplined team like Detroit that, somebody's good to a certain number. Right. And then once it's past that number, they're ready to move on to a different person. They're not going to overly commit themselves, to somebody who's really just helping them fill out the roster in a short term. So you don't want to do the long deal with the older player, but sometimes you want the older player to plug them in and get a good year out of them. And I think people want to be in Detroit. I think that's clear. It's a good culture there. So all those things play together, and other teams do it too. You get some guys on 1 year deal. I think Washington's been a big 1 year deal team as well.
What's your take on Marcus Davenport and just the health? Obviously back on another 1-year deal, but if he gets through the season, how good can he be?
Yeah. I have a hard time keep saying that at this far in the career, right? I mean, I think you would hope for that, but at a certain point, it just kind of is what it has been, probably. So even if he had a really good year, how comfortable would you be investing in that long term? I think that's an interesting question based on just the past. So you're really hopeful for what you can get, but I do believe after a certain amount of time that for the most part, you've seen what somebody's probably going to be.
Mike Sando with us, of course, longtime NFL writer from theathletic.com, with us here on a Tuesday, Locked On Lions. I haven't talked a ton about this, Mike. I want to get your take on just Aidan Hutchinson coming back, the tibia, the fibula, both broken. Do you say, all right, he's going to need a full year before he's 100%? And what do you think of how Hutch will look this season?
I think these are totally case-by-case basis. It's not something that everybody probably recovers from the same, but I think all of the markers for somebody who's young, super talented, competitive, going to work hard, I would say I'd be confident he's going to get the best result that he can get. But, that's a significant injury. So, should we expect him to be at the absolute top of his game? Even, maybe down the stretch, maybe he's able to do it down the stretch, but I would think it's going to take some time. And we haven't seen we saw a little. When's the last video we saw of him running? Was that at the end of the season playoffs?
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah, like a month
Yeah,
and
and
a half ago. Yeah.
it looked like it was a ways away, didn't it? So I think it's going to be a long climb back for him. And if he were in, you know, upper level defensive end form, or even good by the end of the year, I'd take that, and in the hopes that he builds on that to get fully back, the year after that.
You mentioned earlier about the defections, which look, this was going to happen. But Ben
Yeah.
Johnson getting the Bears job. Let's start with that in terms of how big of a loss you think that will be, and also what do you think Ben's impact will be on the Bears in year one?
I think it's a huge loss. I think he was on a short list of probably differentiating coordinators. If you went through all the offensive play callers in the league, usually at a given time, there's 6 or 8 that you really think make a difference on their own. I think he looked like one of them. And so what's very interesting to me about it is, Dan Campbell, with both coordinator spots, he's a big believer in familiarity and knowing who you're going to get and being able to have honest conversations with that person, as opposed to, hey, who's the hottest guy out there? I'm going to turn it over to him, right? So I think this year's going to be a real good test of Dan Campbell on the offensive side of the ball, because John Morton is a veteran coach. He's had exposure to run game, pass game. I think he's got a lot of knowledge, but he's got 1 year of being a coordinator, I believe, with the Jets in
Yeah.
2017. So you're probably bringing him in knowing what he can do, but like, it wouldn't surprise me if Dan Campbell, called plays or was really involved. And I think that's an interesting challenge for him. I think Dan Campbell's always been typecast because of his size, his playing future, the way he talks, right? But he's a smart guy. And I think he may take it as a challenge too, to make, personal challenge to, people aren't going to be talking about how bad this offense has gone without Ben Johnson. Now, I still think it's a loss. So I think it's going to be probably a step back there. And that's just what happens when you lose someone who's special. I think he'll have a good impact on the Bears, but you still have to be the head coach of the team. I think that's a different role. So he'll do the best with that Bears offense, but what kind of head coach is Ben Johnson? I mean, we don't really know.
Yeah, no, for sure. Aaron Glenn out, Kelvin Shepard in, running that defense. Obviously, the job AG did this year with all the injuries that they had,
Yeah.
yet still kept them afloat, and they won 15 games. What's the talk? What do you hear about Kelvin Shepard? And I know the players love him.
Players love him, but it's his first time as a coordinator as well, right? Not a long coaching history. So this is another one where, hey, trust Dan Campbell. He knows his team. He knows Kelvin Shepard. Obviously, Kelvin Shepard, I believe, played for the Dolphins when Dan Campbell was coaching there, I believe. So this is Dan Campbell saying, trust me. I know people. I know coaches. I'm comfortable with his ability to do this job and grow into it. And so I think Dan Campbell has earned the benefit of the doubt on that. That being said, he also went into a year with Anthony Lynn as his choice too. And so he gets a lot of credit for pivoting off of that, but it doesn't mean you're not going to have an experience like that again. So there's unknowns when you have guys who haven't been in these roles and aren't as established. And I think Campbell's earned the benefit of the doubt. But on the defensive side of the ball, that's going to be less likely for him to step in, right, and be able to help. So, we'll see.
Let's talk some draft needs. Let's talk a little Jared Goff as well with Mike. Of course, writes the great piece every year in the Athletic, the quarterback tiers. We love that list. We'll get that to Mike. We'll get with that with Mike in a second, right here on a Tuesday. Locked On Lions. Back with our buddy Mike Sando from theathletic.com. I want to get to Jared Goff in a sec, but real fast, Mike, just on needs in the draft and everything else. Look, the Lions are drafting 28th. It used to be a lot of fun when they were bad, and we could talk about the second pick or the third pick or the seventh pick. Draft is not as fun this time around when they're 28th, which is a good thing. But what do you see as something that you think what button Brad Holmes might push here with 28 or 60 and look at the roster?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. 28. I mean, you're really at that point, you're like, do you want a lower rated guy at a premium position or a higher rated guy at a non-premium? That's usually what it is. So impossible to know who's going to be there, but the Chiefs are a team that has been back there and had some success. They got a George Karlaftis back there, right? Became a good contributor to their pass rush rotation. Is there somebody like that could check a couple of boxes of, hey, he's one of the better players available, and an area where you'd probably like to add some help. They released Zarius Smith. They're not sure what they're going to get from Aidan Hutchinson right away. That's an obvious one. I think that you could also see a situation where, is there a building block for the offensive line as well, and maybe on the interior? So I saw Colton Pouncey, who covers the Lions for us at The Athletic. He had Gray Zabel there, North Dakota State.
Yep.
I mean, it's so impossible to know who's going to be available in that spot. But those are a couple ways I think you could see it going.
It's interesting too what Brad Holmes has done over the years is he's traded up for Alabama players, traded up for Jamison Williams, traded up for Brian Branch, Terrion Arnold last year. It's just something to keep an eye on, right? I mean, Brad gets that itchy finger and he wants to move up, and he's been so successful, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. I think they've operated with confidence and proved people, that they know what they're doing. At least it's worked out. These guys get the benefit of the doubt.
You look around the NFC North and the quarterbacks, they're all different. It's an interesting situation. You do that quarterback tiers piece, and I know you're not going to give away all your secrets, but how did you view Jared Goff this past year? And certainly the last game was not his best game.
No, I think he's firmly established himself as a solid tier 2 quarterback. I think he was 10th in quarterback tiers last year. I believe it was Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen were tier 1. I think Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, who obviously won't be up there again this year, CJ Stroud, Dak Prescott, Goff. So maybe he moves past a Dak. Maybe he even obviously he's going to move past Rodgers if Rodgers is still in it. We'll see where he ends up in relation to Stroud. So there could be room for him to move up a couple spots. But I don't think the opinions on Jared Goff are really evolving right now. I think he's a good, not great quarterback who's probably a little bit underrated throughout his career, but is going to be solid. I don't think a lot changes off of last year. What's interesting to me is just the division at large.
Yeah,
because significant changes in Chicago, Minnesota, and Detroit on the coaching and or quarterback fronts, and I think that makes it very interesting for Green Bay. I feel like Green Bay has kind of been a team that thought it was going to be, and was certainly used to winning this division, right, forever. And things happened that they haven't expected. Detroit got good. I mean, that's something they never had to worry about before. Yeah. And then Minnesota has found a way to win kind of unexpectedly. Different quarterbacks, Sam Darnold, all of this. And so where Green Bay, they made a couple moves this offseason, but they kind of stay the course. Like, where are they going to be? That just really fascinates me. Are they going to be third in the division again? Do they rise to the top? I think that's the most interesting thing about the North to me is what is Green Bay?
Do you see a scenario where somebody would actually, I'm not just tooling on the Bears here, but all those teams could get predicted to win the division. And I think there will be some people, including folks close to Hallis Hall there in Illinois, that will say, why not the Bears winning this division? It's that good and that wide open. But do you see a scenario where some people will hop on the Caleb and Ben Johnson bandwagon that much so?
Yeah. I think people have been burned by the Bears so much that it's a wait and see. There's been optimism a number of times. So I think even with Ben Johnson there, and it wasn't like Caleb Williams was great last season. So I do think that there's very cautious optimism on Chicago, but very much a believe it when we see it type approach. And I think that's warranted for them.
And back to the Lions for a second. You mentioned Green Bay, which really stood pat. Like you said, the Vikings with some changes, and certainly it sounds like, at least right now, is JJ McCarthy is going to be the guy. But how do you kind of view the Lions situation in terms of picking them to win it again and for a third straight time?
Well, it's a solid choice to make because they've been the best team and they have continuity at quarterback and head coach. But I think there's enough uncertainty. You can make a case that really the Lions probably peaked over the last couple of years with their team. You could make that case, and that it'll be harder and harder over time to maintain that. But I don't know that I'm willing to bet on that case that they're going to make some kind of a big step back. I just think it's going to be a competitive division. They're probably the favorite. Are they the betting favorite?
Right now, yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would probably lean on that they're the betting favorite, but I think there's enough uncertainty with those coaching changes on both sides of the ball that, maybe there will be enough questioning of them and they'll use it to their advantage.
It's amazing how well Minnesota played last year. Like you said, nobody predicted that. Sam Darnold
Yeah.
was incredible. The last two games, week 18 against Detroit, and of course the wild card game, he was brutal, and they letting him walk, right? But how do you feel? How do you feel a guy like JJ McCarthy will do? Certainly local from around here, played at Michigan, but you feel that could be an upgrade and that could make the Vikings that much better?
I'm not willing to say that yet. It doesn't seem like the Vikings, through their actions, are saying that either. It looks like they want to keep some pressure on JJ to get the best out of him, or they maybe even have some kind of concerns. I know they let Daniel Jones go, they let Darnold go, but this talk of kind of being in on Aaron Rodgers possibly, and then the idea, I think even JJ McCarthy said, "Hey, they haven't anointed me." So, I don't know if it's uncertainty on the Bears or on the Vikings part, but to me, it would be awful easy to just say, "Hey, this is our guy, and we're so excited. Thank you, Sam Darnold. We're moving full speed ahead." They haven't really said that, and so my question in my mind is why? Why wouldn't you be comfortable saying that? And maybe there's more to the story than we know. Maybe it'll just play out, and he starts, and it's no big deal. But that's just been a little bit of an odd situation to me.
Mike, great to see you as always. Can't wait for that Tears article coming out later on in the year. We always love it. We'll have you back on soon to talk about it. Love your insights. Safe travels to the owners' meetings, and we'll do it again soon.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mike Sando with us on a Tuesday. Great stuff from Mike Sando, certainly from theathletic.com. And Mike brought up a topic for tomorrow. He said, could it be that the Lions might have peaked? We'll bring that up tomorrow on a Wednesday, Locked On Lions.